Hello, after a few months off, I'm back from Barcelona and enjoying Euro 2022. We have the excellent Stevie Grieve as our guest today, a TV star, master tactician with a phenomenal football brain. Enjoy the show. Stevie, thank you very much for joining us. I've really been looking forward to talking to you. I've been following your career for years, and so this is a big moment for me to be able to talk to you, well, live, not quite in person, but live. So thank you for giving up your time and coming on.
Oh, thank you for the invite, and a big fan of the website. I think it's really been really helpful for me and many other people. So thank you for the invite and great work with the website.
Give that credit to Matt because he put in the groundwork, and I'm just taking the credit all these years later. He's still around. I think he's still paying attention to what's going on. But yeah, it was brilliant. I was a fan of the site and the podcast for years, and it's been very, very helpful. So I'm happy that I'm able to continue that. So this is all about you, and there's a lot of knowledge and insight inside your head that you can share with us. So let's get cracking on with that. I'd like to ask you, because you mentioned before when we were talking, before we hit the record button, that you started coaching quite young. I think you said by the time you were 20, you had about 5 years of experience. So what were your first?
Yeah, I started in a job the first week after I turned 16. I'd been coaching for about 6 months before it at Perth Youth Futsal. So I would teach a lot of the technical stuff with the younger kids, because the way I would play would be quite technical, loads of little tricks and skills. You know what it's like, you coach futsal, so just how you manipulate the ball. So I would teach a lot of the younger ones, and I think from that, Steve McPhee, who ran the local community centre for, it's now called Live Active in Scotland, so they offered me a job, and I started the week I turned 16. Initially coached badminton. Can't coach badminton, can't play badminton. But I think in terms of just a start in teaching sport, understanding how to control a group and layer a session, and not always motivate the kids, but keep them entertained, keep them on side within the class. It was a really good start for the first 6 months doing that.
When did you know that coaching was going to be a career for you?
I think it took me about 18 months to realise I was quite good at it. So probably when I was about 17, just before I turned 18, I kind of thought, right, I'm unemployable in most normal jobs. I don't really have much interest in normal jobs. I was quite focused on getting to grips with learning how to teach football, how to construct sessions, how to make development curriculums, which I'd started doing. I knew I was getting given a head coaching role with the community centre, and it was going to be a 12-week block, and I thought, well, I've never actually seen how somebody else puts a curriculum together. And my thought process was, well, in school, you would start on day one and you would end at the end of the year and you would have an exam. I didn't want to do an exam, but I wanted to have a games week the first week and a games week the last week. And I thought, well, what can we teach them to be better at the game from week 1 to week 12? So I started making development curriculums. Then I started looking at not the 4-corner model, because I didn't know any of that theoretical stuff or that best teaching practice stuff at the start, but I kind of looked at it from a skills perspective. What's the different technical skills you would use? So instead of doing passing and shooting, I would look at it receiving and striking, and I would start to layer this development curriculum together quite early on. And then I did my first 12-week block like that, and I was like, well, that went pretty well. And then I think it was from that point on I thought I could probably be quite good at this. And then I started a local youth team, like an under-9 boys team when I was 19. And then I did that. I actually ran the team for about 6 years, 5-6 years. But I think there was probably a point when I was about 17 and a half, 18, when I thought, right, I could be quite good at this. And then there was a point where I remember distinctly just turning 20 and seeing the growth of the players over about 18 months. And I thought, this is probably going to be my job. And then I got a job in America. And during the time when I was in America, I thought, right, I can only do this once. So I'm going to do this once, and then I'm going to go pro youth. So the time I spent in America was that understanding how I want to teach and coach, and not follow any of the stuff that they gave to me, towards kind of how am I going to develop my own way of working and coaching towards going into pro youth, because I just viewed it as a bunch of steps on a ladder. How do I get to where I go? So I think I was probably about 17 and a half, 18 when I realised I could probably do this as a job at some point.
So speaking of USA, talking before we record about how so many elements within some of those organizations didn't appeal to you. And when I was there, we would call, if someone went into more marketing and less coaching or had some kind of split role, we'd end up calling them desk jockeys, because even though they might be doing some coaching, that wasn't the primary focus. But for you, what was it that appealed to you about coaching that made you say, this is what I want to do with my life, as opposed to getting a more normal career?
Probably because I always joke about this, and my wife about it just now. Is like, I don't really have interest in other things. I'm quite sick focused. I also, right, so when I came back from America, I had to get a normal job. So I did door-to-door sales, good at it, made decent money, but then they shut down the industry. So I just thought, like, what's the point in doing a job with no interest in doing? Well, let's just be focused on doing what you want to do. So I just kind of did that. I still do like I'd run my team and I'd do volunteering sessions 3 nights a week. I would do volunteering sessions at the futsal. I'd get paid to coach during the day at the local community centre. So I'd probably be doing 15, 20 hours a week coaching. I'd probably do 15, 20 hours a week in the community centre just as a leisure assistant. And then I'd be doing probably 20 hours a week volunteering coaching. So I was out all day doing stuff, whether it was, working in the leisure centre or coaching or volunteering, whatever. And I was quite singularly focused. I don't think I'd be good at a normal job, to be perfectly honest. Somebody tried to put me in a sales job or a desk job, or nah, it's not for me.
No, I can understand that you don't have the same motivation for it. So I feel like with football, people are in love with football, and so therefore you're willing to put everything into it. But sitting behind a desk making money for someone else, you can't go all in like you can in football. You can't immerse yourself. Like when we plan holidays, I'm always looking to see, well, what are the local teams? Are there any games on? You can't do that with an office job, can you? You can't look at, go on Google Maps and look at the offices near your hotel and go for some study visits. Just football gives you that. It's so much more than just a career, isn't it?
Yeah, I remember working in River Island, and Barry Mitchell, who was the manager, he died a few years ago. He was a good guy. I remember one day, there was nothing going on in the shop. There was no sales to prepare for. It was like your normal Monday, nothing going on. And I'd escaped and I was hiding. I wasn't hiding, but I was pretending I was working up in the stockroom, organising the shirts and all that stuff to try and get not prepare the new stuff, but just to make sure the stockroom was organised. And there was a table and a chair and a desk and a pen, and I just started writing out session plans. And I don't know how long I'd been there for, but I remember Barry came upstairs and he's like, "Stevie, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, sorry, I'm just making my session plan for the night session." And he started laughing and he was like, "Right, okay." He was just like, and he knew he was like, "Right, okay." He likes working in the shop. I don't mind it. It's a bit of a laugh, but realistically, I wasn't for me, and I wasn't going to be doing it long term. But he knew that, and he would kind of let me away with stuff because he knew that was my passion. So I think, if you are going to do some jobs when you're younger and you're still in that, trying to earn to live kind of mode, there will be times that drags you away. But getting caught doing session plans in the stockroom, hiding when I'm supposed to be in the shop floor, and then the boss just being like, "It's fine, just don't tell anybody." I thought, what a good guy. So,
from his perspective, he's thinking there's far worse things you could be sneaking off to do.
I just thought the human element in that guy. He's a top guy. So it's a shame he's not with us anymore.
So, what was it that appealed to you initially about working abroad?
A little bit because I always wanted to go traveling. A little bit because I didn't really feel like I fit in working here. I had different ideas, different thought processes. At the time when I was I must have been 18, 19. Guardiola just took over at Barcelona. And I was like, wow, this style of play is amazing. So you can sit and watch it all day. And I thought, I want my team to play like that. So I would sit and study it, I would analyse it, try and coach, different units and principles and stuff. I wasn't good at it, but I was not bad. And I remember Sarah, who's now my wife, she wanted to work abroad anyway. So we were just like, right, where will we go? So we ended up going to Switzerland. So I worked for Inter Soccer just to try and get to grips with, need to earn money to live somewhere. And then I got a job as the coach at FC Cologne. So going abroad was always an interest. It was always something I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to stay in Scotland for my whole life. I would like to go travelling, but to go travelling, I think you need to have a pot of money, and I didn't have that. So I thought, well, if I can go travelling and work while I'm doing that, and we can build a career and build a profile, then we can see what happens. And if I'm good at it, let's see how far it goes. And if I'm not good at it, well, what's the level I can work at where I can make a comfortable living? So there was a little bit element of that, but for me, it was just, I'd quite like to work abroad, live a different language, live in a different culture, and see what happens. There was never any real, like, I'm going to go and work here and this is what I'm going to do. It was kind of just, let's see where the world takes me and see what happens.
I really like that feeling of when you're working abroad and you get a day off and you go and be a tourist for a day, but then at the end of the day, you go home. That's really nice. I really like that. When you look at all these other Brits going, you twats got to fly home next week, whereas I live here now. That is brilliant, because you then really start to immerse yourself in that culture. So was Switzerland your first go abroad?
No, so I went to America the first time. That was just to kind of get some experience, or intensive experience, and live away from home. Mm-hmm. Switzerland was the second one. So we're in Switzerland for about 18 months, and then I took the job in India. Anurag, who was the co-owner, I think he still is, of Baishun Bhutia football schools, he met me in Switzerland, came to meet me for 3 or 4 hours. We went for lunch, explained what the project was, came to watch me coach, decided it was pretty good, and then created a job for me. So going to India was more just, I don't even know. I think at the time I'd probably sent, without exaggerating, probably sent about 500 emails to different clubs, associations, federations, just saying, this is me, this is what I've done. I'd written a couple of books at the time. This is how I see the game, this is how I see coaching. I had some interest and some contacts. For probably 500 emails, maybe only 5 or 6, but you've got to, I probably had the door-to-door selling mentality at that point of just see who answers. Luckily, Anurag answered and said, we bought your book and we use it for coach education. So if you want to meet up, then I'll fly to Switzerland. So it was probably just a, throw out enough emails and see who replies kind of thing.
You get yourself out there and people do pay attention, which is why the internet is so good. With YouTube, LinkedIn, coaches can demonstrate and showcase their abilities. Now, India is a place where a lot of people would likely turn a nose up at. So what was it that appealed to you about going to India?
So I trusted what Anurag said about it being kind of a bit of a humanitarian project, where they would set aside, I think it was 33% of the income from the club to scholarship kids. So they would give, support for free football and all the support around it to identify the best ones and bring them into the academy. So that was something I believed in. And the second point was, it was a full-time job where you're in charge of not just a team, but a wider organisation, which was kind of the experience I was looking for. The third part was, I wanted to work. I actually quite enjoyed working and living in French and a second language. And I thought, well, how far out my comfort zone can I push myself here? So I took the job, very far outside your comfort zone, having to push yourself, having to come up with different ways of working. So it's interesting because at the time you had all these things about, this is how you should work and this is how you should coach and this is the best way of doing it. And a lot of it was like FA related stuff, and people on Twitter saying, no, you shouldn't coach this way, you should coach that way. And it's like, yeah, you haven't worked in India. The way of working in Leeds and the way of working in Lausanne and the way you'd work in Delhi are 3 completely different things. And how you get that your ideas across to people are going to be received differently. So for me, it was more, how do you do coach education? How do you do curriculum planning? How do you do, how do you do tryouts for 650 players in one day with one venue? Stuff like that. Like, you just learn so much by going and experiencing something different, where you go in a little bit blind, but you understand that the people that you're working with have a really good idea, and that they're going to give you a lot of belief that you're there to help them. And it works both ways. If you don't have the belief in the organisation, you're not going to do a good job. And if they don't have the belief in you, then you can't do a good job. You're always going to be getting pulled against in some way. So I think the reason why I took it was because I just had belief in the people and what they were trying to do. And it sounded good. So I took it.
Well, while you were there, you ended up on TV, didn't you? With the mind game. Now, over the years, I've gone back and watched quite a lot of episodes of that, because unfortunately in England, I think there is a definite gap for useful tactical analysis surrounding games on television. Anyone who's been stuck in a conversation with me will hear me bitch about the lazy punditry that we get on TV here, and how I feel as a coach, it makes life a lot harder because they oversimplify things and speak in cliches. And then when I go out and referee games in my spare time, you've got people like Robbie Savage and Rio Ferdinand who don't actually know the laws of the game. And what they then say on Sky and on BT is then parroted by parents and grassroots coaches the very next day. And I'm having to almost stop the game and go, oh, that's not how it works. Sorry, that's not the rule. They change it one. I know you've been watching TV, so it was really good to, refreshing from the point of view of seeing someone when they go in depth who clearly knows what they're talking about, and actually be able to provide some value rather than just the old tired cliches. Actually, really good CPD, and I recommend it for coaches. All the videos are still on Vimeo, right?
Yeah, quite a lot of them are on my one. I think Rennie Marich still has quite a few of them as well on his page, because he was putting them out on his page at the time. He got a lot more views than I did, though.
So how did this come about? How did you end up on the mind game?
So one of our coaches was Nikhil Naz, who was the lead anchor for New Delhi TV, which I think is the biggest news station in India in some way, or certainly in New Delhi. So he was the main guy. I didn't know that. I just knew him as Nikhil. Well-spoken, well-dressed, great appearance, very passionate about coaching, would speak to you about, I've been to an Old Firm game, I've been to Barcelona Real Madrid, I've been to Boca Juniors out River Plate, and I'm like, you need to have cash to do that. So I remember saying to him one day, Nikhil, what do you do? Oh, I work on TV. I work for New Delhi TV. And I never really thought about it. Like, that's the guy that coaches, because I'm not watching New Delhi TV. I don't understand Hindi well enough. So I was coaching one day, and he was there, and he said, would you go on TV? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, right, you might get a phone call in a few days. I'm like, okay, fine. So I think nothing of it. So R.K. Srinivasan, who was the producer or the director, producer, the main guy for 10 Sports, they were just moving the station from Dubai to Delhi. And the guys who were working for him in Dubai, I don't think were moving or willing to travel to Delhi, apart from Joe, who was the host. So I got a phone call from RK asking, can I go in for a meeting to the TV station? So I took my laptop, I took a bunch of the books I'd written. They were like, right, so we hear that you're a good coach and you know a lot about football. Can you do analysis? And I was like, yeah. Have you got any examples? And I was like, right, there's my laptop, there's 2 books. And I literally, right, I didn't say anything. I sat there and they were just going through all the files on my laptop, reading the books, because it's analysis to coaching based. And then they were like, can you start on Monday? Like, yeah, all right. So me, having never bought a suit in my life, had to go into Delhi, get myself a suit. I put on so much weight. I had a horrible sunburn because I've been out in 40-degree heat all day. So I was like, oh no, I hope the makeup guy is good. I was like, the only thing I could think of is, I hope the makeup guy is good. So I went and did TV. Joe Morrison took me for a pint after. He was like, so how long have you been doing this? Never. It's the best TV debut I've ever seen. Well done. So, seriously. He's like, yeah, that was ridiculous. because of the time and the flow, I knew that I only had about 20, 30 seconds to make a point and then get out. I probably felt quite natural to do it. So I was given a 4-show contract, which was for 1 week. The 4-show contract was extended till the end of the month, which was extended to the end of the season. I think I started, my first game, I think, was Man United against Olympiacos. Or that might have been the last game I ever watched on the TV as a fan. And then, yeah, we did that until the end of the season. Then the second season, I was given a new contract. So it was me, Terry, Steve Coppell, Paul Parker. And then I remember Archie saying to me one day, he says, you know the Piero that they've got on Monday Night Football? Yeah? We're going to get one. All right. Do you want your own show? What? If you want your own show, we'll make a time slot for it. We'll do like a half-an-hour show just on analysis. And I was like, yeah, of course. So they went and bought this equipment. They put the business case together to make an extra program, gave me my own show. The funny thing about it was we would watch the game live. Obviously, we do the Champions League Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Europa League Thursday night. But you're finishing at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning because of the time zones. And we would have to film at about 11 o'clock on a Friday morning. So I would be finishing either Champions League or Europa League, having to go in the next day, get all the time codes from the analysis that I've made of the game, whether it's the time code from the clock or the time code from the game, you have to marry the two up. You then have to go and pull the games from the server, put it into the calibration software, clip it all, edit it, make sure it looks kind of right, and then you need to be on the set for about 11:15 to get all the light in the camera. I always had to stand on like a 6-inch or a 4-inch block because of the height difference between me and Archie is not tall. Like I always had to stand on a plank, and people joke about it, but I actually did. I did a show with Ashley Westwood, and he's like 6'3", and I'm basically standing on like a step ladder next to him to kind of make the camera look right, and the camera have to be a different angle. So yeah, that was I don't know how you explain to people you get that opportunity in life, but man, like so grateful that anybody kind of saw the stuff I was doing or thought it was good and gave me that sort of backing and opportunity is incredible.
It sounds incredible. Was it enjoyable?
Oh, it was brilliant. Like even though like you know that you finish at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, it's an hour drive home. You get in, you probably get washed, you have to chill out a bit because you're total buzzing from being on TV because you're on focus mode for 5 hours. You do your pre-match for an hour and 15 minutes. You do the game. You've really got to analyse it because you know you've got something coming up. You need to talk at half-time. You need to do your research. So you get home at 5, you know, you've got coaching the next day. So quite often I'd do a Tuesday night Champions League. I would then go do coach ed like first thing in the morning on a Wednesday because it's too hot to do it beyond a certain point. So you'd be trying to do that at 9. So I'd be leaving the house at 8, be up at 7:30. So I'd be maybe 3 hours sleep. I'd do coach ed, go to the office, go to the gym, go to training, work with the coaches a bit, go home, wash, shower, change, back to TV. Same again the next night. So I would probably sleep on a Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday morning. That's the only time I would sleep. The rest of the week I'd be 3-hour, 4-hour shifts at sleeping. So I wouldn't change it for the world. It was amazing to do it. Like if somebody asked me to do it now, I'd be buzzing. I'd be so happy.
Well, I was wondering when you would pay off that sleep there. That is one hell of a schedule. Did it affect you?
I think now, you know, in hindsight now, it did. I probably left Delhi with severe depression to a level. You're working so many hours, you're putting so much time and effort into things. It's just a constant focus and putting everything you've got into it. I think I did leave Delhi like with major depression. There was so much stuff around you which you start to take in and you become wary of, and it probably did have a major impact. But at the time, you don't think about it. You're just getting on every single day, doing everything you can to be as productive and as useful and as, I suppose, talented, as passionate as you need to be. But I think towards the end, you know, the last 4 months I was in India, I didn't want to leave. we got married and Sarah came over, and I think she could probably see that it was having an effect, a lot of the stuff which I didn't see, but yeah, it was the only time where you can sleep is a Friday night, and then you're getting up Saturday morning to go and do some lighter stuff because you've got games. Saturday night you sleep, but you're watching games until midnight, so then you've got games again at maybe 10 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning, so you're getting some sleep, you're going and doing it again. Maybe Sunday night you maybe get a nap because you're not doing Monday TV until Monday night at 7 or 8, I think it was, when it was live. So I would do coach education on Monday morning, but again, I'd be getting some level of sleep. It'd be a lot more than 3 hours. So it was an absolute grind. I think now, like, I only need like 5 hours sleep a night to feel fine. So it's probably been helpful in that way, but it did take a toll, the amount of hours and effort and preparation it was doing.
What was it that you think made you so adept at this role? What was it that allowed you to develop a deep tactical understanding over the years where you could go on TV and add value to a Champions League broadcast?
I think I didn't look at it anything from an anecdotal perspective, as in I have done this and this is how I would set up against it. Like, I'm not Paul Parker. I haven't played in a World Cup semi-final in the Champions League. I don't have that experience to call upon and speak anecdotally on. I'm also not a journalist, and I can't set a narrative and tell a story and do all the things that get people engrossed in the show. I can't do that. But what I can do is analyse a game almost better than 90% of the population. I can watch a game and say, right, this is the structure, this is how they're moving the ball, this is how it's affecting the opponent, this is the timing. Like, I can't really explain how I can see or think that. It's probably just from breaking everything down into the most minute detail and figuring out, does that make sense, and why does it affect this player and why does it affect that player, and being able to do that. So I think it more comes from a lot of study. But that's what I would bring to the broadcast. I'm not there to talk about my playing experience. I was rubbish at football compared to the guys I was working with. I haven't been a manager, or hadn't been a manager to Steve Coppell's level. So there was nothing that I would say, that they would say, that I would add more value on. So I was there and I knew my job was break down the game, study the players, give as much high quality insight in as little amount of time as I could, and be as clear and concise with my points regarding what's happening in the game, and why it's happening, how it affects the flow of the game. And, maybe subs that change the game. I remember Fabio Contral going off for Marcelo in one game for Real Madrid and it flipping the Champions League final over because it was a more attacking left back. Like, that sort of thing makes a huge difference. Or Atletico Madrid always taking advantage of Raul Garcia against Jordi Alba on diagonals, high balls, getting yourself 80 yards up the park just because a long ball diagonal flick on, get in the box. Stuff like that, changing the flow of a game, because you're not saying this is better or that's better. You're talking about why are things happening and what's important. And I think I can do that to a really high level, and that's what I brought to the broadcast. And I think that's probably why they kept me around so long.
For any analysts listening, what advice would you give? Because you delivered with a high degree of clarity when you made your points. So what advice do you have for analysts in that regard?
I think actually that probably comes from the coaching, because when you're coaching, you don't talk for any more than 40 seconds. And actually, if you were to stop a session with your girls and you talk about something, even if it's quite intricate, if you were to time yourself from stop, point 1, point 2, understand, recap, go, bang, that's probably 40 to 45 seconds. So I think because my coaching background made me be really clear on the information that I wanted to project to people, to make sure that they understood it, and also having to work in a second language before, you're not waffling because you don't have enough words to waffle. So when you're doing it in a second language, it's like, right, bang, 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 got it, go, 40 seconds.
Now, I found that in Spanish, I often make my point within 5 to 10 seconds. So I'm thinking, should I be saying more? If I was speaking, I'd still be talking now, wouldn't I? And so, yeah, having to do it in a second language really does help with that clarity.
Yeah. I just, like, once also, right, you're on TV. If you're going too long, Andrew, who was the other presenter, Andrew Leslie I worked with, he would go. But you do it like out the camera shot, and that would be hurry up. And I remember the first time I did it, and I was like, that was too long. Like, yeah, he was like, I never ever have to do that. And he only did it to me twice the whole time I was there. But I was like, every time the first time he did it, I was like, right, I get it. Second time he did it, I was really annoyed with myself. And I would almost get to the point where I would ask for a timer sometimes, like to be ticking in the corner. And I would be like, right, and I would time myself doing it. And if I was more than 40 seconds, I'd be annoyed. But I was always like a 30-second point in, point out kind of guy. But that was probably from a coaching perspective that comes from.
I think a lot of coaches would like that kind of thing when they're making their points. But I suppose your timer when it comes to coaching is the players' faces. So,
yeah,
they're looking.
And you know, that's probably something Scottish FA are really good with in their coach education. Is they'll say GTBM, and like normally the English boys or the foreigners will GTBM, get the ball moving. So it would be, there's a lot of that here where it's, you know, the culture here is say what you're trying to say, get on with it. So I think that's probably just the background and the upbringing you probably have in Scotland is say what you're going to say and get on with it. So
do you think it's more of a cultural thing? Like, Scottish people tend to get to the point a lot quicker.
Yeah, I think it is a cultural thing. What I found quite a lot with, I don't want to say it's English coaches, but I found it more prevalent with English coaches working in Canada that they would talk a lot longer and articulate their point a lot longer and paint more pictures a lot longer. And you'd be like, well, that was 2 minutes and 40. You could have said that in 30 seconds. Get the whiteboard out, bang, 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 clear, go, play. Fix the next point in 2 minutes. Let them play for 2 minutes, bring them back in 30 seconds. Got it? Go. Right, let them play for 3 minutes, bring them back in 30 seconds, bang, go. Play. Everybody clear, right, stop. What's your problem? Got it. What's your problem? Got it. Right, cool. So if there's, instead of just giving them all the information at once, it's just done in little bits. And I think that's probably a cultural thing with Scottish people.
Well, quite handy nonetheless. So let's go into some of the nitty-gritty in India, and then we'll talk a bit about Canada as well. What was some of the most enjoyable things about India, and what were some of the challenges you faced?
Do you know what? The most enjoyable thing was, like, you could see the growth of the coaches over a longer period of time. So sometimes you'd have to go to Chandigarh or Mumbai or Dehradun, and you would see how much the coach had grown in 3 months. And you would see that on a daily basis in Delhi. So you've got these guys that they can run a session, they can put the cones out, they can do all the really basic, simple things, which would get you a start. But over time, like, they don't need a foreign coach after I left, which was my whole objective, is when I leave, they should not be hiring another foreigner. It should be run by the Indian guys. So the most enjoyable thing was, like, Indian culture is, I don't want to say at the time or now because I'm not there, but it was like a little bit against women. So a big point of what I did was I wanted to identify 2 or 3 really talented female coaches and give them opportunities, but like really mentor them, put them in the right people, give them the right opportunities, and then try and just work with them constantly and give them, you know, the confidence that they can do it at the same level as men. So Manisha, Mamta, Ritu, they 3 were incredible very quickly. And you could see that they could be really good. They just needed that encouragement. I think coming from a foreigner, that probably helped. They've got a hierarchy system there, so you would be talking about, like, me saying that to them carries more weight than somebody else from India saying that we can do it. So that was so powerful. And then over time, you would see like Anup, Vivek, Vikas, Rajiv. He was just a funny guy. Just really good with the younger ones. You would get him. You could teach him how to do all the technical and tactical stuff, but he was just a big personality. And for the younger groups, that's what was needed. But he probably needed to work with older groups more often to push on. But his character and his personality meant he was more infectious with the younger ones. So you're trying to teach him how to be Rajiv being himself and Rajiv the coach. And you're trying to work with him so that he knows which character comes out, if you like. So that was always something. And then like Anup, Vivek and Vikas had 3 kind of different mentalities and skill sets in the way they would hold themselves, but 3 really, really talented boys. And they've done unbelievable since then. I think they're all A licence holders, all coached at professional level, all work with professional clubs at some level, or professional organisations. So the most enjoyable thing was, like, you could see from when I started to when I left, the growth in the coaches and you'd left them with a platform where they were able to go and do things on their own. They could teach themselves, they could teach others. So yeah, that was so enjoyable. You could always see it every day that they were improving. If I had one regret, it was that like doing the TV did take away from that. But it's one of those things. Like if I had one regret, it would be that I probably had too much to do with the TV at the same time as when we're in a really critical period. But at the same time, it was the growth of the staff, and the growth of the coaches, and the growth of the academy was incredible in that time. I was proud to see what it is now, because it's now, I think they've got 15,000 students, a bunch of different residential schools, coaches are homegrown. So all the stuff that was put in place back then has just grown and evolved, and Indian guys have taken it away themselves and ran with it and made it better. So, congratulations to them. They've done so well since I left.
I like what you said about not wanting to have a foreign coach after you. That's a really good legacy, in that you've been able to help develop something where it almost becomes self-sustainable. And the best coaches have altruistic motivations. So that is really, really, that's great to hear. Now, if we look at some comparisons between Canada and India, they're both huge countries, incredibly diverse, lots of different cultures within them. One of the biggest contrasts I can think of would be the weather. But apart from that, what else would be different from working in football in India compared to Canada?
So one of the similarities is that neither of them are football first. India's cricket and hockey. Canada, you could say, is hockey and basketball. Since the Raptors won the championship, you could say basketball's starting to take a little bit, but football is probably sport 2.5. Whereas hockey is definitely sport number 1. So you're going into a culture where a lot of things are taken from hockey. A lot of the way they speak in the language comes from hockey, because if you take an average like hockey player and put them in any sort of club in Britain, they'll be more knowledgeable than the coaches, because they're brought up in that environment and that culture. So there's that comes into it. I think the biggest difference was like the maturity of the kids. You could actually, with the Indian kids, they take everything in and they'll try and use it. The Canadian kids were quite intelligent, where you would try and teach them stuff and they'd be thoughtful about it. Very respectful, very polite. Within our club, it was so diverse between the level of house league and the level of the top level, especially on the girls' side. The girls' side was so strong that they were among the best in Canada every year. The boys' side was a wee bit weaker, because it's not traditionally a football town. It's a hockey town for boys, whereas it's a football town for girls. Whereas if you go to like Brampton's basically the sports city where a lot of the best sporting people come from. So Brampton's one of those areas where you've got that mixture of socio-economic factors. You've got mass scale immigration, so you have more diverse population, a little bit of poverty. You don't really have the things that drive elite sport performance in Burlington. It's just such a nice town. It's like the nicest town in Canada. So your job in India is, can we make an infrastructure to produce the best players in India and send them abroad? Whereas in Canada, it's, can you try and improve the growth and participation and retention rates within the club, and develop the ability of the coaches to put on better services, if you like. So it's two different kind of industries within the same industry, if you like.
So what do you think you enjoyed most about Canada?
And people are brilliant. Like, we had Canada Day the other day, and my wife always jokes about it. Like, we're basically Canadian. It was just, love the people, love the country, great place to live. It's like, if you have the opportunity to live anywhere in the world, Canada would be one of the places you would pick. Burlington would be among the best places you would pick in Canada. So it's like, it's such a great situation to be in to start a family. And I enjoyed my time at Burlington. It's like they're so appreciative of the work you put in to try and help the kids, to help the families, even though it's a pay-to-play culture, and that does create its own crossovers at times because people are like, yeah, we're not getting the opportunity that we're paying for. It's like, sport, it's like you don't pay for opportunity, you work for opportunity, but you are paying for the service to be given the opportunity. So there's always that kind of that, and it's not unique to Canada. You know, you get it in every single state in the US, and you're going to start to get it in Britain once pay to play becomes more prevalent. So you have,
really good.
you know, what's the perspective that they're coming from within the ideas that you're trying to implement as a coach within a club, but understanding it's almost customer service when you provide the product.
Now, sorry, before getting to these last questions, which are more specific to you and your strengths, your weaknesses, your ambitions, just like to throw one into you that I've not prepared you for. Is there any country that you haven't worked in that you are intrigued by, somewhere you'd like to go and experience football for a few years?
Yeah, so there are 3 or 4. I always wanted to work in Italy. I always wanted to work in Brazil. You know, football for me it's a sport about like enjoyment and flair and enthusiasm. And I think, like, as much as Italian football gets a lot of stick for being dour and tactical and defensive, it's not. It's disciplined. And Brazil is just Brazil. Like, you get to watch some of the most skillful players in the world that just maybe don't have the same level of organisation of European teams do, but that's not why you're watching Brazilian football. You're not watching Brazilian football in the hope that it looks German.
Yeah.
I always wanted to work in Japan. I only worked with 2 or 3 Japanese players in my life, and the Japanese kids and people, like, you tell them to do something, they just go and do it, and then they don't ask how long am I doing this for. They just keep doing it till they're better at it. And I think the mentality, the culture would be incredible. And now, like, when you watch the J League, the standard is so high. Like, if you're a coach or a head of recruitment or a sport director working in Japan, that'd be so enjoyable. And then I want to work in Africa at some point, but Africa is so much. Like, do I want to work in Morocco? Probably. I'd like to work in Morocco. But do you want to move a family there for a long time?
Yeah.
Your question is, do you want to work in Japan? Yes. Would you move your family there? Be difficult. Would I love to work in Brazil? Yes. Would you move your family there? Be difficult. Italy, you could learn Italian. Fine, as long as it's a nice place. So for me, like, Australia, the A-League is growing. So many good players are now being exported from the league to Central Europe. It always happened, but now almost every team in the Scottish Premier League next year is going to have a good Australian player playing in it. So Australia wasn't something which was on my radar 4 years ago, but has been probably for the last 2, because the way the league is growing, more investment, better facilities, players coming through are better. The link between the state leagues and the A-League is getting stronger. The national teams are generally pretty good. They'll go to the World Cup again. So Australia, from a sporting perspective, is now, and has been for probably the last 2 or 3 years, like, quite high in the list. But now that I've got 2 kids and a dog, it's, if you think back to the Canadian experience, it's probably like, right, okay, what's the work-life family balance that looks like? So I think at some point, I don't know when it'll be, but I would like to think at some point Australia might be an option. So we'll see how that goes. If it was just me going on my own for 6 months or a year, is anywhere interesting, I don't mind.
Yeah, I can totally relate to it. It's big decisions for people in those kind of situations, and there's so many attractive propositions. And as you get older and more responsible and you build families, you can't take that job in a war zone anymore like you might have done.
No.
So
yeah, might have done, but not anymore.
Yeah. So now onto yourself. You've had lots of different roles: technical director, head of coaching, head of analysis, opposition scouting, head of recruitment. In which roles do you think your strengths lie?
So the way I would frame this is, it's not which one my strengths lie. Like, I'm good at them all. I think the problem I face is, where do you use the skill set the best? Where's your best career growth? since I stopped working with St Johnstone, I've met with a lot of different people, and the thing that keeps coming back is good coach, yeah, good analyst, yeah, good at recruitment, yeah, good eye for scouting, yeah, organised, yeah, can connect all the dots, yeah, understanding of sports science, yep, understanding of data analytics within it all, yeah, you should just be a sport director or a director of football. Because it's not like, for me, it's not just that I'm going to go and coach. Okay, I could coach, but I could also run the club. Could I be an analyst? Yeah, but I could also be the coach. It's like, I'm probably in that weird position where I've spent a lot of time learning about how to do a lot of different things, that I have a good understanding of how to do it and good competence at them all. But I'm not a specialist at one area where I can say, you know, I could be a world-class coach. Maybe I could be, but I need to be in that position as part of first team staff and showcasing that. And I'm 35 now, and that's not happened. And the chances of me getting from that position at 35 to 40, it's slimming, we could say, unlike myself. So I think taking all of the experiences and skill sets and competencies that I've got, the thing that keeps coming back to me is, and Robbie Nielsen was the first person that said it, was, I could see you being a sport director in the future. So since that point, it's kind of been, right, okay, can we get towards that position of sporting director or director of football, or whatever people want to call it, and use all of the things that I'm good at to make a club grow and develop better. So I think that's probably the route I'm aiming for, whether it's a head of scouting in a big club or something like that initially, before moving into director of football or head of recruitment, or being head of recruitment. To go into that sort of position again, we'll see, but it's July, so hopefully the offers that I would like to have start coming in soon.
So could you do a director role if it meant no time on the grass coaching?
Yeah, no problem.
Easy trade-off for you then.
I think it is a mental switch, I must admit. So when I first came back from Dundee United, Andy Goldie had asked me to take the 16s. I took 3 or 4 sessions, but I was doing 16s after I'd been in the office from 7:30 till 4:30. So I'm doing all the analysis, I'm getting all the stuff prepared, I'm on my own. I have a really good relationship with Robbie Nielsen, who at the time was the manager, and the coaching staff, who was Lee McCulloch and Gordon Wallace. I had a good relationship with them, but I couldn't leave them without the stuff they needed to go to take training, to then go home and do all the family stuff. We'd literally just moved home, so that got moved to the side. I didn't want to leave it to the side. It was a real mental switch that was, initially it was very difficult to go, right, coaching for me is not going to happen. When the pandemic came, it was like, right, well, I'm not doing anything just now. I can't coach, can't do this, can't do that. And then obviously, did my job at United and then moved to St Johnstone. There's no coaching involved there. There was the idea floated that would help coach the 18s, but you're head of recruitment. Your job's not to help coach the 18s. Your job's to find players. So I kind of moved that to the side. So yeah, there has been coaching opportunities to come up in the last couple of months. There was one USL which was happening, then wasn't happening, and then I don't really know what happened with it. So I'm not focused on trying to find a coaching job. If one came my way, then I would, of course, discuss it. But I think right now it's like, if I'm a director of football, I'm going to watch training. I'm going to see what the manager's up to. I'm going to see how we can help him, whether it's, more analysis resources, is it more sports science resources, is it more coaching resources, is it better players? It's, what are the things that are going to enhance and drive better performance? So I think, if somebody says to me, right, tomorrow you're going to be head of football or director of football, and that you're not going to have to coach again, fine. I'd be sad, but I think I've already made that mental switch from being a coach to being somebody who works as a head of a department. And it is difficult, I'm not going to lie, but it's, at some point you have to make choices in your life.
What are the fun parts of these different roles, or the parts of them that motivate you? What would make you maybe take one role over another one?
Sorry?
So what are the fun parts of these different roles, or what about them motivates you, and what might potentially persuade you to take one role over another?
So like with the head of recruitment job, that was something which was floated to me by a few people. Like if you see yourself going down the sport director route, head of recruitment would be a good entry point to that, because you're taking charge of creating the way that you identify players and then present them to the manager in a way which might make him want to sign them. And then if you look at, we had quite a difficult transfer window last summer, and then in January I probably had a little bit more input. We signed a few players which the ones I would recommend are all between 22 and 26. I don't try and look at anybody older generally, unless it's somebody who's just so far beyond what we would normally get that it's a no-brainer. But the excitement comes from, right, we've signed the guy, we've done all the due diligence, we think he's good, and he goes on the pitch and he's pretty good at training, then we're like, right, okay, this guy is good. And then he plays some games and it's like, okay, he's helping make the team better. Right, great. Who's the next one? Because you've made the team better with that guy. So when the next one comes in, he does well, you're like, yeah, great. But at the same time, like, you're going to sign a player who just, for whatever reason, just bombs, whether it's the ability to adapt, whether it's the social integration to the team, whether it's does he fit with the manager's tactics, whether it's does he fit with just living here, does he fit with actual level of ability, is he good enough, is he not good enough, is he just a bad fit for the group in whatever way? So there's so many things that you're going to have to take into account, but it's so exciting to actually just get stuff done.
Now, we laugh about this stuff, but you just brought up something that's an important point. If you're trying to recruit in Scotland, are there certain people from different parts of the world where it actually is quite hard? I remember when Middlesbrough got those fantastic players in the 90s, like Ravanelli and Juninho, thinking, how on earth did anyone convince them to go to Middlesbrough? I mean, if you're in a club in Scotland, is that part of it? Is it difficult to bring people in because of maybe the perception or what they think the weather or the lifestyle might be like compared to somewhere else where they could be?
No, that's like a misconception. Like, it's cold everywhere, it rains everywhere, it doesn't matter where you go. So no, I think it's probably the adaptation of style and culture is going to be easier for some places than it's harder from other places. So, but then it comes down to the individual, because we've both worked abroad, right? We could say, oh, it's really hard for English guys to work in Mexico, and you could say no, proved otherwise. But I could say it's hard for Scottish guys to work in India, and say, well, no, proved otherwise. I think you do it on a case by case basis. You do your diligence. What motivates the person? Why are they interested in playing in your club in your country? And what are the things that are going to make them succeed or fail? Sometimes you get a feeling that the guy just wants to play abroad anywhere, and in hindsight, that's probably something that you need to do more digging in. At the same time, you need somebody who's just super motivated, that they're like, right, this is my goal, and you're one step of the journey, and I'm going to smash it, and they'll do everything that they can to do well. Other ones, it's like they want to play for you because they think they'll fit in the league. So there's lots of different things that would cause a success or a failure, but it's not. I don't think there's that thing of, I don't want to play in Scotland because it's cold and rainy. It's cold and rainy in Manchester.
Yes.
Cold and rainy everywhere. That's just the way the world is. But I think one big thing when you're in Scotland is you're a direct route to England. You get a work permit in Scotland and we can move you to an English team. So if you're a Portuguese guy wanting to play in England, you can't go direct to England. You go and play in Scotland for a bit. Same for anybody. So it's when you're ahead of recruitment in Scotland, that's one of your selling points. Is, well, where your entry point to England. If that's where you want to go, then stop the bus here for a bit and do well and then see what happens.
And that could open a whole can of worms with EU and potential Scottish independence down the line. But we'll avoid that for now because that would be hours worth of discussion and fascinating areas. So the last one I'm going to pitch here is, from your time working in other countries, what lessons could Scotland learn from abroad? And likewise, what does Scotland do really well in football that other countries can learn from?
I think Scotland actually does quite well for producing coaches of a certain level that do well and work around the world. I think the players that are coming through from the performance schools are of a higher level than Scotland have produced for a long time. So you can see that the improvement in coaches and coach education has got better, is then working within the performance schools. The players coming through are better. So we're a country which has always done significantly better than what the size of the country and population should be doing. And I think that's downplayed a lot. We get compared to England next door. England has 50 million people and some of the best resources and biggest finances in the world. England should never compare themselves to us. They should be comparing themselves to Spain, Germany, Italy, Brazil. So if you compare Scotland to other similar sized countries of 5 million, us, Norway, Croatia, you could argue Norway and Croatia are doing a wee bit better, but we do well for the size of country we are. The advantage we have is that we're a football country, we're a sporting country. Everybody's quite passionate and determined as a general thing, I would say, across the country. People are quite determined to do well. So there's a lot of things that we do is just from societal things rather than just the way everything's organised. So there's opportunities for people to play, there's opportunities for people to coach or to referee. There's reduced travelling distances in Scotland, so there's a lot of things that make it the game accessible, the opportunities and access to the game accessible. So I think we're a country which do well at a lot of things, but nobody really says so.
Well, I know you got to get off. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming on.
Fascinating
to finally talk to you live like this. I'm very grateful for your time. So once again, thank you for coming on, sharing your insight and your experiences and your stories. I've learned a lot and I've had a good laugh too.
Right, cheers, Will. Good to speak to you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye.
Massive thanks to Stevie for coming on. I really enjoyed that and hope you did too. A few quick announcements for you. The Football Lingo app has finally launched and it is amazing. Great for any coaches wanting to work abroad and learn new languages. The brilliant Matt Ward is offering 15% off his 30-day career mentor program for BFCN members, adding another great benefit to being a member of this site. And in personal news, the Southampton Aztecs Futsal Club are growing and looking for more sponsors. If you'd like your company's logo to be seen by tens of thousands of viewers on BT Sport, get in touch. See you next time.